We left nothing undone for its perfecting, rejoicing in the prospect of its fruitfulness." He paused and was silent for a long time. At last, Grace and Glory asked softly, "What happened, my lord?" "It brought forth wild vines," said the king quietly. "An enemy sowed them, bitter, poisonous vines, which bore bitter, poisonous fruits. And moreover, the wild vines ran riot, flourishing in the richly fertilized soil, growing strong and rank. They smothered and choked the vines, which I had planted, and then clambered up the other trees and strangled them to death also, until there were great curtains and festoons of wild vines covering everything." "Couldn't you have done something about it?" asked Grace and Glory sorrowfully. "Couldn't you have rooted up the wild vines and got rid of them?" "We tried doing that," said the king. "We tore them up and burned them, but the shoots ran underground, and as fast as we rooted them up, they appeared elsewhere. We tried, too, grafting the wild vines with grafts from the royal vineyards on these mountains, but the grafts would not take. The wild vines were parasites, and they seized on the real vines, as I told you, and on all the other trees, and sucked the life out of them or strangled them to death. So at last there was only one thing to be done. We set fire to the mountain and caused it to be burned from top to bottom until all that was evil and parasitical and wild was utterly destroyed." "And will you leave it like that, ruined and desolate and dead?" asked Grace and Glory in a trembling whisper. "Oh, no," answered the king with a look of loveliest joy upon his face. "We will plant it again and make it of greater fruitfulness than would otherwise have been possible. For the ashes are making the soil still more fertile and are preparing it for resurrection life. One day the view from this mountain of pomegranates will show all the peaks round about, looking down on a mountain of vineyards more fair and more fruitful than any other part of the kingdom." There was another long silence, and then Grace and Glory spoke again. "I begin to see why you brought me here, my lord. You understood what I wanted to speak to you about. I am so troubled and perplexed. Will you teach me? Will you let me ask all the questions which have troubled me since we went back to the Valley of Humiliation and I found my aunt in such misery and was unable to help her?" "Ask anything you wish," he said gently. "This mountain of love, with the view from it, is one of the best places in the world for asking of questions and for the receiving of answers." "Then," said Grace and Glory slowly, "I want to ask you about all the evil and misery down there in the valley and the cause of it. What is it, Lord, which has wrought all the havoc? Why are all the inhabitants of the valley so wretched and miserable and dreary, even though they seem hardly to realize it?" "It is because they have broken the royal law of love," answered the king. "Love is one basic law on which the whole universe is founded, and by obeying that law, everything abides in harmony, perfect joy, and perfect fruitfulness. But when it is broken, disharmony immediately results, and then come miseries and evils of every kind. Righteousness is the condition of everything which is in harmony with the law of the universe, and therefore right. Unrighteousness is everything which is out of harmony with the law of love, and therefore unright. Love, which worketh no ill to her neighbor, is the fulfillment of the whole law on which the universe is founded. Holiness and happiness and health are the result of complete separation from everything which breaks the law of love. And a holy people are those who are set apart to love. Sinners are the poor, miserable people who break the law of love and so bring evils of every kind upon themselves, such as abound down there in the valley. When men love, they fulfill the law of their being. When they break the law of love, they disrupt and frustrate the very law of life. As long as they love, they are healthy and happy and harmonious. But when they cease to love and begin to think envious, resentful, bitter, unforgiving, and selfish thoughts, then they begin to destroy themselves, for every part of their being is then poisoned by unloving thoughts. "My Lord and King," said Grace and Glory, "what is true love? How can it be recognized?" "I am love," said the King very clearly. "If you want to see the pattern of true love, look at me. For I am the expression of the law of love on which the universe is founded, and the very first characteristic of true love, as I have manifested it, is willingness to accept all other human beings, just as they are, however blemished and marred by sin they may be, and to acknowledge oneness with them in their sin and need. To acknowledge also that every human heart needs both to love and to be loved, and that herein lies the very root of the oneness of mankind. For unless you sons and daughters of men are loved, and also love all others besides yourselves, you cannot become what you are destined to be, the sons and daughters of the God who is love. He ceased speaking, and at that moment a company of the king's servants, who had just approached the mountain of Pomegranates in order to gather a store of the beautiful fruit, broke forth into singing as they began their work on a nearby slope. These are the words of their song. "Love is oneness, oh how sweet to obey this law. The unlovely we may meet, need our love the more. Make us one, O love, we plead, with men's sorrow and their need. We are one in needing love, let us true love show. Only love's sun from above makes our spirits grow. Love us, this is our heart's need. Let us love and live indeed. We are also one in this, we must love or die. Loving others is true bliss, self-love is a lie. Love of self is inward strife, loved turned outward is true life. Let us love and fruitful be, love is God's own breath. Love will kindle love and see new life born from death. Nowhere is a heaven more sweet than where loving spirits meet." When the song had ended, the king pointed out over the wide landscape and towards the black mountain and said, "See how plainly the law of the universe is demonstrated in all that love has created, and how everything which the Creator's hand has formed and fashioned, when it obeys the law of its being, shares with others and acknowledges its oneness with the need of all. Behold how this law is indeed written in everything around you." So Grace and Glory looked. Down in the valley far below were the green pastures where the flocks were grazing. She pictured all the myriad little blades of grass giving themselves freely to nourish the flocks and herds. She remembered the unnumbered wildflowers giving forth their sweetness and beauty and perfume, even in places where there was no eye to see them, no onlooker to appreciate them, ready to be trampled down and broken, or else to bloom their whole life long without receiving praise or recompense. Then she looked at the trees of love growing all around them as they sat up there on the mountain, saw how laden they were with fruit which others were to pluck and enjoy, finding all the meaning of their existence in this ministry of giving. She looked up at the sun shining overhead, shedding its light and warmth so freely upon all, on the evil and the good, on the unjust as well as the just, on all alike. She saw that in its self-giving and self-sharing, and in its willingness to enter into and become one with all who would open to receive its light and warmth, it was indeed the great symbol of perfect love. She looked at the streamlets, all hurrying to go lower and lower, to give themselves to refresh all thirsty things along their banks. Everywhere she looked, she saw nature exulting to give and to share with others, and by thus doing, to become one with them. Then she began to think of the many creatures who break this law of the universe. The beasts of prey, always seeking for themselves and giving nothing but to their own young, the parasites and the wild vines which had ruined the Black Mountain. And she realized how destructive everything is when it will not remain in harmony with the law of love and oneness. She realized, too, that this same law was indeed written in every part of her own nature. It is happy to love, she thought, and it is healthy, too. It is utter misery to withhold love and to live only and always for oneself alone. I see that it is exactly as he says. Love must express itself in giving, must find a way to become one with others, just as he found a way to give his own life to us, and thereby to become one with us. And all the misery down there in the valley really is because the inhabitants are breaking this law of their existence without realizing it. While she still sat pondering upon all this, the king himself began to sing, and these are the words of the song which he taught her up there on the mountain of Pomegranates. There is one law by which we live. Love loves to give and give and give. And on this royal law so named, the universe itself is framed. No lasting joy is anywhere, save in the hearts of those who share. Love yields 1,000-fold and more to those who practice love's great law. That love is far too weak and small, which will love some but not love all. If love to one it will decline, 'tis human love and not divine. Love cannot be content to rest till the beloved is fully blessed. Love leaps to succor all who fall, and finds his joy in giving all. When he had finished this song, the king rose to his feet and said, "Now it is time to return to the lovely work of self-giving and sharing." And with that, he pointed down the mountain slopes, and then together they went leaping and bounding down the mountain on their hinds feet, down toward the little green carpet far below, which was the valley of humiliation, where their ministry of love was so much needed. And that is the end of chapter 2, Mountain of Pomegranates, Love, the Law of Love. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace. And please remember, be still and know that he is God.